Let's start by going to Argentina, where last week's primary election results might be, in the words of Dilma Rousseff, light at the end of the tunnel for the crisis and the rise of far-right extremism that has dominated Latin America over the last couple of years. The story of the modern wave of Latin American far-right politics always needs to go back to the Obama administration supporting the 2009 coup in Honduras. You cannot understand anything from the challenges and the white supremacy exploited by Donald Trump with regards to the refugee crisis generated in Honduras without understanding that coup, as well as the broader rollback of pink tide governments across the region with active U.S. support. Argentina, President Macri was elected in 2016, running on a hard right, austerity-driven marketeer program, and the results have been predictably disastrous. Rates of growth have slowed, poverty has increased, the economy and prospects for normal Argentinians are quite bad. And that meant that in the first round of voting, and there will be a runoff in October, that Alberto Fernandez led Marcio Macri 47 to 32.1%, winning in the primary. Alberto Fernandez is a former chief of staff to Nestor Kirchner, who was the leader of Argentina in the early aughts, who challenged the World Bank and IMF, who implemented some very important stimulative policies. Fernandez had a falling out with Cristina de Kirchner, who was Nestor Kirchner's wife, and then after he served, she served 2 terms as president as well. This joining of their political prospects is significant because it means a sort of realliance inside the broader centrist and center-left populist bloc, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. But first, years of austerity under Macri have devastated the Argentinian economy and wiped away the significant anti-poverty gains of both Kirchner's administrations. Kirchner drastically reduced poverty under her governance. Argentina saw a 71% decline in poverty between 71 and 81%, according to the World Bank. Argentina is a heavily indebted country, and Macri recently accepted a hefty $57 billion package from the IMF in return for the implementation of deep austerity cuts and a rollback of government aid. Markets immediately rebelled against the first round of voting, which favored Fernandez and Kirchner. And we've already seen the stock market tank, the pesos drop dramatically, and there are the never subtle signals from the Western financial class and Wall Street that they want to strangle democracy in Argentina and keep the Macri program going, even though it has been so damaging for so many of Argentina's citizens. And of course, this has a broader history going back to Operation Condor, which was a CIA-backed regional effort of far-right regimes across Latin America in the 70s and early 80s to murder people on the left of every category, from center-left to Marxist. This was a mass killing regimen with the backing of the CIA.
We'd have been in trouble.
We'd have been in deep trouble. And particularly and specifically in Argentina, the Argentinian military junta disappeared thousands of students and political dissidents. After the return of civilian government, Argentina struggled with debt for decades, a significant portion of which was accumulated under the military junta. There was a Great Depression in 1998 and 2002, following years of neoliberalism in the 1990s. Argentina fell into a depression and accepted loans from the IMF and private capital. This was what the Kirchners reversed. And it's very important to understand Cristina de Kirchner and Nestor Kirchner, because on one hand, they sent the IMF and the World Bank packing, which is extraordinary and had a huge benefit to Argentinian workers. They invested in social programs. They backed some efforts in civil society and labor, and they also had significant gains in broader social inclusion rights for gay and lesbian people as well as women. Now, there are corruption allegations against Christina de Kirchner, and there are criticisms of the government that I will just say two quick things about. One, we're living in the real world, and we need to push for and fight for any type of broad left win in Argentina. So I would support the Alberto Fernandez Cristina de Kirchner ticket unreservedly, full stop. We live in the real world, period. And those governments had significant gains and significant contributions to alleviating and fighting poverty and challenging international capital. That being said, there is no question, and I will touch on it more another time, that some of the allegations around the Kirchner government are both juiced by the right wing. There was an attempt to strip her of an ability to run and imprison her as well, which parallels so many other cases, of course, most particularly Lula. But I will say that some of the allegations around her might be more substantive and more serious relative to the just absolute farces that we've seen out of Brazil. That said, I still entirely support her and Fernandez. I cannot emphasize that enough. And in fact, Alberto Fernandez, as a candidate, has visited President Lula in prison and called for his release. And the Kirchners both were at the center of a pink tide effort that cumulatively across Latin America brought 70 million people out of poverty, and Argentina's record is central to that. So yes, there were absolutely mistakes and problems, and there is a critique from the socialist left in Argentina. The Kirchners also don't fit neatly inside the other political manifestations of the left inside the pink tide. Lula and the Workers' Party is in many respects the world's youngest social democratic socialist party in that vein, rooted in labor, rooted in movements and liberation theology. Chavismo was an attempt to update socialist principles in the 21st century and really had some very radical efforts in terms of the economy and decentralized democracy at its best. The Kirchners come from the Peronist tradition, which is not a left tradition to say the least. It has left components, and they certainly implemented and were internationally heralded for their courage, as I say, against the financial institutions and their social programs. But the lineage that they come from is not of the left. They have been coalitioned with the left. They are part of a left tendency of Peronism. But Peronism is more akin to military authoritarianism. So they fit in a broad pink tide coalition that spanned everybody from Evo Morales and the Cocoa Union to Chavismo to Rafael Correa. There is broad distinctions inside this grouping on social policies, on relative more or less repression, relative more or less conciliatory to international capital. And the Peronist tendency is distinct within it. So that's important history. At the same time, international capital, of course, was violently opposed to the Kirchners because of, as I said, their significant challenge to it. This includes vulture hedge funds and investment funds in the United States that hold Argentinian debt. And the United States Supreme Court, in a stunning decision in 2014, literally ruled that the sovereign government of Argentina needed to pay off a vulture fund in the United States. And of course, they were able to do this because of the massive relative power that the United States has relative to Argentina. So this is extremely important for understanding the ongoing economic colonialism of that relationship. There's been a collective punishment of the Argentinian people through successive World Bank and IMF programs, the same programs that were pushed to an extreme in the 1990s and led to the depression of the 1998 to 2002 era. We need to unite the left from Argentina to the US, to the UK, to Greece and Spain, to fight for debt relief, to fight for serious social programs, and a future that is written by the people, not international finance. And that is why I absolutely support the Fernando and Kirchner ticket, because we situate it in a political, historical context, defeating Macri, who of course has his own swirls of human rights abuses and corruption allegations and all of the rest, with an increasingly authoritarian tendency that coalesces with his complete acquiescence and acceleration of international capital. We need a beachhead against the far right and against financial hegemony in Latin America. And it looks to be that the Fernando Kirchner ticket is the one to do it. Do you guys have anything to add on this?
So, the capital flight that happened in Argentina following the primary election is a really great example of how ridiculous our global economic system works. When you're reading this in the United States, a lot of people in Bloomberg, they're reminding everyone that, yes, a lot of people are moving their money out of Argentina just because they have been following what's been going on there in the past 6 months. But all of these people together taking their money out of the country has massive effects on its domestic economy. So this is one of these questions that if you're very serious about democracy, you need to start asking yourself, is this a kind of rational system that we want to be living under, where people have control over massive amounts of resources, basically aren't paying attention to what's going on to a country, or also are very much against any kind of left program that's working for poor people in general, that they're able to basically effectively punish an entire nation of people for exercising their democratic will. Personally, I think it's absolutely ridiculous, especially when you recognize that Argentina was hit so hard by the financial crisis that was caused by the United States. Right. So it's like Wall Street basically is already punishing them. Argentina's having to pay for their greed in the first place. And then again, they hit them anytime they try to do anything different in their country.
Absolutely. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.